My name is Dr. Aisha Sherzai. I'm a neurologist. I am the co-director of the Brain Health and Alzheimer's Prevention Program at Loma Linda University, which is kind of far away from here in Inland Empire, San Bernardino. And I have the privilege of being one of the principal investigators of the Healthy Minds Initiative study here at Beach Cities. And so that means that we, my husband and I, Dean, who's probably going to join us in a few minutes, we are conducting a study looking at the impact of lifestyle factors on brain health. It's a 3-year study. We do pre and post biomarkers and other questionnaires on lifestyle to see what do factors like nutrition and exercise and stress management and sleep hygiene and cognitive activities affect brain, and how does it modify cognitive state. And the goal is to prevent cognitive decline, to prevent diseases like dementia. As a neurologist, I see patients in the clinic and in the hospital, but I also have a master's in nutrition, and I'm a chef. I went to cooking school. So the wonderful people of Blue Zones here in Beach Cities asked me to demonstrate and talk about the importance of food for brain health, for mind health. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So this is my kitchen. And today we're going to make a phenomenally easy and delicious meal that you all can prepare in your kitchens. I chose the Greek gigantes. The gigantes essentially is a very, very common, very easy food in the Mediterranean area, specifically in Greece and in some of the Greek islands. And I chose this because, first of all, I mean, you probably know the concept of Blue Zones is about foods for longevity, foods that are great for your health. And one of the common foods that you see in all of the Blue Zones, whether it's in Sardinia, whether it's in Icaria, Greece, whether it's in Loma Linda, California, where I work, which is one of the only Blue Zone here in the United States, and other parts of the world, are the consumption of unprocessed plant-based foods. And among those plant-based foods, one food just completely reigns and comes on top, and those are beans and lentils, because they are one of the most fiber-rich foods in the world. So I'll start cooking for you guys, and I'll start making this recipe, and we're going to talk about the importance of the nutrients in some of these food products. So I have a relatively high-tech desk here for you guys, a table. I have 2 cameras, so I'll be switching back and forth between cameras so you guys can have a closer view of the cooking process as well. Now, for this recipe, I'm not sure if you all got the recipe, but the recipe is there for you all, and you should be able to have it. And I have this recipe. We've actually written a book called The 30-Day Alzheimer's Solution. It's part of that book, but it's really, really common recipe. Usually, let me tell you guys, this is not an authentic recipe. This is my variation of a very common, delicious recipe, and I wanted to make it very easy, so you don't have to turn on the oven, so you don't have to have special pots for it. You can actually use a really nice pan, relatively heavy pan, because it's going to act like an oven for you. So let's go ahead and start the process. I'm going to switch cameras here for you guys so you can have a closer view of what I'm doing. Now let's talk about the kind of beans that we're going to use in this recipe. So I chose butter beans. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a can of butter beans that I got from Whole Foods, and there's no salt added. You want to make sure that you reduce your salt content in your food as much as possible, because salt has been associated with higher blood pressure, with a damage to the vasculature, whether it's in our brain or in our heart. So you want to use butter beans, and this is what it looks like. Now these butter beans are different from other types of beans because they're very soft. They're very, very soft, and you can actually make a really nice mash out of this. We actually add butter beans to potatoes during Thanksgiving to give the potatoes some more fiber. But it works with any kind of white beans. You can actually use navy beans, cannellini beans, which are essentially the same texture, but they're just smaller if you kind of compare the two together. Look at the size. Now, there's another one that is called lima beans. I don't know if you guys have had lima beans, but lima beans are huge. They're about maybe double the size of these butter beans. And, the authentic recipe actually calls for lima beans, but this will do. And so this is essentially 1 can or 15 ounces of the butter beans that I use, the one that has no salt in it. Okay. So this recipe calls for a little bit of olive oil. And as you know, in the Mediterranean recipes, they use a ton of extra virgin olive oil. And I'm using this California Olive Ranch extra virgin olive oil. Now, there was a time when, oil was thought to be harmful, but now with lots of data coming in from studies looking at heart disease and brain health, we know that extra virgin olive oil is actually healthy. It's a good replacement for things like butter and saturated fats. So I have this heavy pan on medium, and I'm going to just heat up my extra virgin olive oil a little bit. And then I'm going to add about half an onion. Now, this is like Costco size giant onion, but you just need to add a lot of onion because it's the most delicious part of this recipe. You can't skip on this, okay? And these are just regular yellow onions cut in silver. It doesn't matter if you want to chop it. Now, this recipe is called Greek gigantes or gigantes plaki. In Greek, plaki essentially means the base is made out of olive oil, garlic, and onion. Now, this is what actually gives any recipe a lot of flavor, and you have to take your time to soften it, to caramelize it. A lot of foods get their flavor by the addition of salt and other flavors. But if you have time, if you cook onions and garlic and extra virgin olive oil on moderate heat, it caramelizes and it imparts such a beautiful flavor to your dish. I just lost my spoon. Hold on one second. Let me get my spoon. So we're going to cook these onions on medium heat. Now, your onions and garlics and other ingredients like tomatoes, they're your aromatics. Your aromatics create a base flavor for any dish. And like I said, the combination of onion, garlic, and oil, especially extra virgin olive oil in this case, is the base of many, many, many recipes. If you really want to kind of take the flavor of your dish to the next level, understanding how to cook onions and garlic and allowing it to simmer together makes a huge difference. Now to that we're just going to let it soften up and become a little golden in color for a few minutes. So there's no rush. We're not going to rush this. And you want to make sure that you keep an eye on the heat and it's not too high because it can easily burn. So this is where you put some love into it. This is the love part where you actually pay attention. It's almost like a meditative part of the whole cooking process where you feel, you smell, you see the color, and you make sure that it cooks properly. Now I also have some garlic, and the recipe calls for about 2 cloves of garlic. These are relatively smaller in my opinion, so don't judge me, but I'm going to use 3 or 4 of them, okay? 2 is for rookie level garlic. We're going to go for expert level garlic here. So the smell of the onion is amazing, and we're just letting it cook really well, slowly, gradually. And I'm going to go ahead and prepare my garlic while the onions cook slowly.
We have a question, Aisha. Karen was wondering, do the onions add nutrition as well as flavor?
It does. So onions have a lot of different enzymes that help break down fiber. It has fiber, but the acids and the aromatics and the oils actually help break down fiber. And for something as fibrous as the beans, it actually makes it more digestible. So not only are you adding flavor, but you're actually improving the nutrient content of any vegetable, whether it's beans, whether it's squash, whether it's tomatoes, anything is actually enhanced by the onions that you add. That's a wonderful question. So the other thing that we are adding here are garlic. Now garlic have the same kind of aromatic enzymes and micronutrients that onions have. There was a time when garlic was studied for its impact on blood pressure, and it seems that people, when they consume more garlic, they actually have better blood pressure control. It's also a very potent anti-inflammatory. And so adding garlic to your dishes is not only going to impart a lot of flavor and make it delicious, but you're actually going to make your dishes even healthier. So like I said, we're not going to skim on the garlics here. I'm just going to roughly chop it. And the more you chop your food, of course, the better the flavor profile, right? So I'm just going to smash it real hard and add it to our dish. Making sure that you stir your onions every once in a while. Now, if you realize, I didn't add a lot of extra virgin olive oil. In the typical Mediterranean dishes, they add about half a cup of extra virgin olive oil, and they basically allow everything to kind of get drenched. But I'm going low fat here because, you know, even though it's a good oil for the brain and for the heart, it has a lot of calories. Every tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, or any oil for that matter, has about 180 to 200 calories. And so if we want to be fit, if we want to make sure that we have good weight control, one of the easiest ways to do it is by cutting down on oil or fat. And you're not going to take away too much from the nutrients because we're adding so many different flavors and spices and herbs and beans to it that it's not going to make any changes to the nutrient content. It does definitely increase the flavor, though, I have to say. Cooking in oil increases the palatability of any dish. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but it's kind of yellow, like deep yellow, golden color. This is a good color. I'm going to increase my heat a little bit. I usually cook on my gas, but today for the camera, I'm using this, and this needs to be a little higher. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my garlic to it.
We have a question. Marianne was wondering, can you use minced garlic in a jar?
Of course you can. Of course you can. It's just a matter of choice. What I do, Marianne, is hold on one second. What did I do here? Are you guys here? There you are. I'm sorry. I kind of lost the video for a little bit and panicked. In any case, I was saying, what I do is I buy a big bag of garlic. I skin it. I process it in a food processor. And then I have ice cubes. I put the garlic in ice cubes and put it in the refrigerator. And then I take out all of those cubes and put them in a silicone bag. So I use little cubes of garlic in my cooking, and that makes it so much easier. But I just wanted to be a little fancy here for you guys and smash it here in front of you. All right. Anyway, so this is smelling really, really good. I'm going to cook it a little bit more. Now, you may notice that sometimes it's difficult to cook if there's not much oil into it. That's okay. What you can do is you can add a little bit of broth or even water, just to make sure that it doesn't stick to your pan. I have a non-stick pan. As you can see, it's easily gliding around. But if you have the type of pan that sticks and you feel the onion sticking, just go ahead and add a little bit, maybe a tablespoon of broth and water, and just keep on watching it. And you can caramelize onions in broth very, very easily. So we're going to just kind of let it cook a little bit more here while I get a little bit of broth and water ready in a container. All right. So let me just get my water here. There you go. Like I said, I'm just going to add a touch. And what it does is it also deglazes the pan, which means all of that goodness at the bottom of the pan, it comes up along with the broth or the water, and it gets mixed with the onions and the garlics. I'm going to cook it a little bit more. I want it to be caramelized a little bit more before we add all the other ingredients. Now, let's talk about beans a little bit while the onions cook. Let me go ahead and switch the camera. So, benefits of beans. Now, people who consume beans on a regular basis have longevity. They have better brain health. They have less cardiovascular diseases like heart attacks and strokes. They have better regulation of their cholesterol levels, their blood pressure. And that's because of the amount of fiber that is in beans. Beans or lentils are a great source of fiber. They're low in fat. They come with the best and the cleanest source of plant proteins. They have all the amino acids, and they also have complex carbohydrates. And people who consume beans on a regular basis, they actually are leaner. They have smaller waist, and this is all objective evidence of things that have been studied. And it actually promotes better glucose control. So for people who have, say, for example, prediabetes or diabetes, when they consume beans, the complex carbohydrates in the beans, they are actually retained in the gut in a way where they slowly release glucose into the circulation. So you don't have glucose shooting up right away. It's slow and gradual. The kind of amount that your body can use over a long period of time. And so consumption of lentils and beans is one of the best things that one can do. It does sound like a panacea, but trust me, it really is. I don't like the word superfood, but it is an amazing, amazing food. There are some concerns about beans. You probably must have heard about them. You know, people have come up with this anti-nutrient called lectins. And there are some popular books out there that say, oh, lectins are associated with inflammation in the body, that it can actually promote cancer, things of that nature. Now, lectin is a type of protein that is present in bean, and it's considered an anti-nutrient because when people consume, or not people, but you know, in some of the studies, they've shown that large amount of lectins actually cause bloating. It can cause some immune issues and some inflammation. But as far as bean consumption is concerned, when you cook beans, because nobody eats raw bean, when you cook beans, almost all of the lectins are gone. As a matter of fact, the amount of lectin that is available is actually helpful. It's an anti-inflammatory. So as unfortunate as it is, I think it's just a paranoia that's not based on any science. We shouldn't worry about lectins in our diet. And we shouldn't ignore foods like beans or tomatoes that have high amounts of lectins. And these are one of the healthiest foods on earth. So there's really no concern. And some people have a lot of bloating and gas when they consume lentils and beans. And that's because our gut, our microbiome, so we have more living beings in our gut than we have the number of cells in our bodies. Now, these bacteria, fungi, and other living beings, they actually replicate themselves based on what you give them. So the food that you eat determines your microbiome. And for people who are not used to eating a lot of beans, I'm going to add a little bit of water to make sure that it doesn't burn here. But for people who are not used to consuming a lot of beans, their gut bacteria, their population is different. And when you're introducing high fiber, high complex carbohydrates, and high protein foods, which are very healthy to your gut, for a little bit, for a few days to a couple of weeks, you have a lot of gas and bloating because those bacteria are not used to breaking down the amount of fiber that you're introducing in your body. But over time, the gas and the bloating and the discomfort actually goes away. And you start building a new population of microbacteria or bacteria or living beings in your gut. And those gut bacteria are super helpful because they break down fiber and they create short chain fatty acids. So these are the breakdown products of fiber, short chain fatty acids, SCFAs. And these short chain fatty acids actually help to protect our brain. There is a junction in our brain called the blood-brain barrier. So the arteries that go into our brain, from our heart to the neck to the brain, there are millions of them. And they have a very tight junction. They don't let bacteria or chemicals get into the brain. But these short-chain fatty acids, they actually keep the integrity of those gates of that blood-brain barrier. So people who have more short-chain fatty acids as a result of eating beans and complex carbohydrates, they actually have better brain health. They have better regulation of insulin use in their brain health. So all in all, you're actually doing yourself a big favor by consuming lentils and beans on a daily basis. All right, guys. Here it is. It looks beautiful. Let me show you what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, it's a beautiful golden color. It smells incredible. I added a little bit of water, as you saw, and this is the color you want to go for, the golden, beautiful caramelized onions. I think it could probably need a little more caramelization, but I'm good. I think I'll just leave it as such. All right, so the next thing that we're going to add to this is our tomatoes, okay? So for this recipe, I have a 15-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. They were actually diced tomatoes. I just kind of crushed them with my fork because I wanted them to cook very fast and easily. But this is a no salt added diced tomato can, all right, along with its juices. And I'm going to add this now to the pan.
We had a question from Lisa. She was asking, how often do you recommend people have beans? Is 1 to 2 times a week considered sufficient?
I say every day. When they've done studies, people who consume, 1 to 2 servings of beans every single day, which comes down to about half a cup of lentils or beans every day, have the most benefits of it. And that can be things like hummus. So if you wrap a hummus on a piece of whole wheat toast, that's half a serving, or actually 1 serving, half a cup. It could be a cup of lentils, it could be a cup of beans. But for those of you who are not used to consuming beans on a regular basis, I think starting off with a couple of times a week would be amazing. Yes, absolutely. So now we're going to let the tomatoes cook in the sauce, and I'm actually going to add a little bit more tomato-ness to this recipe. We're going to add some tomato paste, and this is just the ones that I got from Costco. Let me go ahead and get a spoon here and add this to our pan. Now that's about a tablespoon. I usually don't measure things because I cook them so often, and my mom taught me how not to, just kind of eyeball everything. So, as far as if I go off a little bit here and there, please forgive me. But that's just how I'm used to it now. All right, so we're going to let this cook on high heat. I went up on high so that we can start cooking it. Now, tomatoes. Tomatoes have a compound called lycopene. Now, lycopene is amazing. And guess what? You can find more lycopene in cooked tomatoes compared to raw tomatoes. So there are certain vegetables that actually have more benefits if they're cooked, and tomatoes are one of them. Lycopene has been associated with lower risk of cancer, lower risk of heart attacks and strokes. And of course, it is such a potent anti inflammatory compound that it protects your brain from things like neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. So we added our tomato in there. And now, once it starts cooking a little bit, you're going to add your spices. Now, this is the forgiving part of this recipe. I love this part because you can actually add anything you want. This is the time when you can give it, a more Indian flavor by adding curry. You can add Mediterranean spices. You can add Greek and Italian spices. I've actually made this with sumac, with turmeric, with curcumin, coriander, and I've also made it with more of an Italian Greek herbs like oregano and peppers. So for this one, I'm actually going to add about a teaspoon or 2 of oregano powder. You can add fresh or you can add dried. That's oregano. I love oregano. It's so good. And just to boost the nutrients, I'm going to add turmeric. Now, turmeric is one of the brain healthy spices out there. There was a time when it was kind of soft science and we didn't believe that it was going to make much of a difference. But now more and more research, our own research actually came out. We studied this in Cedars-Sinai, where we looked at people's retina to look at their amyloid protein in their retina. So retina being an extension of the brain, you can tell whether people have a deposition of this abnormal protein called beta amyloid protein that has been associated with Alzheimer's disease. And it seems that turmeric is a very, very potent anti-amyloid item. It actually decreases the load of beta amyloid protein in the brain and in the retina. So any opportunity you can get to add turmeric to your foods, it is wonderful. I'm going to add a little bit of salt here, not too much. As you noticed, almost everything, including the tomato paste, actually did not have any salt. So I'm going to make sure that there's not much salt. And while this is cooking, you're going to keep an eye on it. And if it gets too dry, again, add a little bit of broth or water to it so that you have this beautiful creamy base. As you can see, I'm actually spending a whole lot of time creating the base because this is the flavor part. All right. So now that we've added our oregano and turmeric, now we can actually add anything else that we want to. To this, you can add some rosemary. I actually have some thyme. I have a garden, but unfortunately some birds just ate my thyme, so I actually had to go and get some thyme from the grocery store. And you can add fresh or dried ones. I'm just going to get the sprigs of, about a sprig of thyme, like leaves of a sprig of a thyme, and just add it there. You can be quite liberal in your use of herbs because they're just fantastic as far as flavor and health benefits are concerned. Pound for pound, fresh herbs or dried herbs and spices have more anti-inflammatory compounds than any food in the world. So make sure you have a really good pantry of having spices and herbs there with you. All right, giving it a good stir. Now, I like my food spicy, so I'm actually going to add a little bit of crushed red pepper, but that's completely optional. Oh, my camera started moving here. Let me just go ahead and fix this. There it is.
And then we had just a few questions. The first one asking, are all beans equal?
For the most part, yes. So as far as their protein content is concerned, about a cup of cooked beans can have anywhere between 12 to 19 grams of protein. And as far as calories are concerned, it's about the same. These butter beans have half a cup of them have 100 calories and they have about 6 grams of protein. So a cup has about 12 grams. So yeah, it actually just depends. They're not very different from each other. Like for example, these are the navy beans and they also have 100 calories and they have about 7 grams of protein. So it's essentially the same thing. None of them have any fat, no saturated fats, which seems to be the most harmful fat for the brain, and lots and lots of fiber, magnesium, iron, things that actually help your blood vessels stay healthy. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of water here. Okay, and I think now is the time for us to add our beans. Now, typically in Greek cuisines and cooking, what they do is they basically put this pan in an oven and it has lots and lots of olive oil. They put it in an oven for about 30 to 40 minutes and they bake it. And the idea is they want the beans to completely absorb the flavor of the onion and the garlic and the extra virgin olive oils and the herbs as well. But I found that really you can actually make it in a pan very easily as long as it's a heavy pan and it has a lid. Oops, I kind of spilled a little bean over there. I spilled the beans. In any case, we're just going to let this simmer now, lowering the heat to about medium and allowing it to simmer. And then when it's done, we can add more herbs. We can add more greens, some lemon to brighten up the flavor. Let me get the lid and we can have a Q&A right after that. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to let this sit while I change the camera so I can answer some of your questions and see what's going on in the comment section. All right. Okay, what about tomatoes and inflammation? Tomatoes and inflammation. So I think you're referring to the concept of nightshades, right? Yeah, I thought they triggered it like all the nightshades. That actually happens in very few people, very, very small percent of the population who have some sort of an autoimmune condition that essentially promotes inflammation when they're exposed to nightshades. That's a very small population, and they have to have a diagnosis of things like rheumatoid arthritis. My camera is not really happy right now, but we'll fix it. Rheumatoid arthritis, or some other autoimmune condition that definitely calls for the need for being on medication, on disease modifying medication. But for the rest of the population, tomatoes and nightshades are great sources of vitamin C, B vitamins, fiber, and very potent anti-inflammatory products. So if unfortunately, when you look at the information out there, data on a small percent is actually magnified, and it's extrapolated to the rest of the population, and it shouldn't. Like, just the concept of gluten, right? There are people who should completely stay away from gluten. They develop very, very bad reactions and damage to their connective tissues, to their skin, to their vasculature if they have true gluten allergy. Celiac disease is a great example of having true gluten allergy, but the percent of the population that have true celiac disease is about 1%. And then about another percent of the population may have some sensitivity to gluten, so they need to be aware of their consumption of gluten. Add another percent of the population who are allergic to wheat products. But for the rest of the population, whole wheat, 100% whole wheat, or stone ground whole wheat bread, or other whole wheat products are amazing, because again, this is a great source of complex carbohydrates, and complex carbohydrates are the main source of fuel for our brain and for our body, especially for the brain. And so, you have to look at the information from what context it actually came. Lorraine says, should people have acid reflux, avoid tomatoes that may be acidic? Yes, during the acute stages when they have acid reflux, which means that they have inflammation of the inner lining of their stomach, probably because of other factors, whether it's medication or too much bad fat or too much protein. When you eat a lot of animal-based proteins, your stomach actually has to start secreting a lot of acid to break that protein. So if you cut down on the animal proteins, you actually eat a more complex carbohydrate diet, low in fat, the stomach walls will have an opportunity to heal itself, and you'll get better. And hopefully you can add tomatoes to it as well. So tomato may slow down the process of healing of the inner lining of the gut, but it's not the reason for gastritis or acid reflux. I hope that makes sense, Lauren. Marianne says, are all beans equal? I think I answered that, right? Lisa, I answered your question. Minced garlic in a jar, Marianne. Those are great questions that you asked. You have practical questions, which I love. All right. Jean says, how many servings does this dish provide? I don't know, Jean. If you're hungry, 2. If you're not hungry, 3. I think it's going to be about 3 for today for me and my family. And this is wonderful because you can keep it in a container. And because it's cooked very well, you can actually use it as a topping for other things. You can eat it with brown rice. Today, I'm actually going to serve it on a toasted sourdough bread for you all, which is my favorite way of eating it. But if you want to keep it gluten-free, because some people do, you can eat it with some hash brown potatoes. You can eat it on a slice of baked sweet potatoes. You can eat it on a salad green, and I'm actually going to make that for you guys to show you that you can serve it on salad greens as well. So different ways of serving it too. All right. Who's cooking with me? Is anybody cooking? I don't think anybody's cooking, right? I don't see any cooks around. Never mind. It's okay. All right. Go ahead and ask your questions. I'm just waiting for this beauty to get done. And now for the toppings, I have some fresh parsley. Any herbs works just fine. I'm choosing parsley today, but you can actually serve it with dill. It's beautiful. And I also have some lemon. So for making sure that your salt content is low in your food, you can rely a lot on herbs and aromatics. So the garlic and the onion, and now the citrus lemon, the oregano, the turmeric, even the tomato paste, which has a very sour taste to it, the crushed red peppers, all of this gives it a ton of flavor. So you're not going to miss the salt. And of course, adding more herbs to it just takes the flavor to the next level. I also have some red peppercorn, which I love. It looks so beautiful on top of it, and it has a beautiful nutty flavor. All right, I'm just cleaning up my surface a little bit. to prepare for the toast and for the beans. I don't know if you can't hear it. The microphone is closed, but it's simmering and it looks absolutely beautiful. In the typical recipe for gigantes, there is no turmeric, but I always add turmeric to whatever dish I have an opportunity to. Let me just go ahead and clean up my surface a little bit here so that I could show you a close up of the final products very quickly. Okay, and like I said, you can cook this with any kind of beans. You can cook it with even kidney beans if you want to. But practicing and getting the plaki part right, which is the onion, the garlic, the extra virgin olive oil, and the tomatoes, that really is a good skill to keep, and you can modify that as you go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start crisping up the sourdough piece, and as soon as that's done, we're going to serve this. Let me show you what this looks like. This was faster than I thought it would be, actually. I thought it would take some time. Let's see. Changing the camera to show you guys. All right, as you can tell, it's like simmering. It's on medium heat. It looks beautiful. And this is the consistency you want. You don't want it very soupy, okay? You can actually keep this on very low heat and continue to cook it for about half an hour. But I think about 15 minutes should be fine, especially if you have your beans already softened from a can, or if you have cooked your beans already. It just takes less time for it to cook. And because it's soft, softer beans absorbs more flavor quickly. If it's raw and if you have not cooked it, it takes a while for it to absorb flavor. So we're good. All right, let me go ahead and start chopping up there it is, my parsley, so that we could actually get that ready for the garnish. And like I said, dill is amazing too. As a cooling agent, you can actually add a little bit of yogurt, soy yogurt or almond yogurt or cashew yogurt. Sometimes this dish is served with cheese, but we're going to stay away from cheese because we're going to minimize saturated fats as much as possible. So all fats are not bad. There are certain types of fats that are bad. We have saturated fats that are found mostly in cheeses, in meats, in dairy products. And then you have unsaturated fats. So mono and polyunsaturated fats are unsaturated fats. And these are predominant in plant-based foods. And that's why plant-based foods or plant-based diet, or at least a plant-forward diet, as the Blue Zones concept goes, is healthy because it is low in saturated fats. So go ahead and see if you can use a little bit of soy yogurt or almond yogurt on top of the beans. It actually makes it really, really delicious. All right, so I have my beautiful, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm just going to chop it really fine and get it ready for garnish. All right, I'm keeping an eye to see if you have any other questions. Now, we were in Greece last year, before the pandemic, actually, December of 2019. And one of the things that I saw almost everywhere as an appetizer, as a breakfast, as a snack, was this dish, the gigantes. And it's very common. It's considered a peasant food because it's so cheap and it's so easily available and made, and yet it happens to be one of the healthiest foods ever. So you can have these beans for breakfast. You can serve it as an appetizer. You can serve it as a main as well. I think we're ready.
We had a few questions. Paul was asking, can you use non-fat yogurt?
Absolutely. Why not? Non-fat yogurt is just fine.
All right. And then Tina said, I know onions are great for you, but I have real stomach problems with raw and gently cooked onions. I can have dehydrated onions, but if I add fresh ones to dishes, I have to cook them to death first. Any suggestions? I'm finding more and more people who have this allium problem too.
Yeah, it's very common. Some people just don't necessarily have the gut bacteria or the enzymes to break down some of these aromatics. And so I'm sorry, you just have to cook. The other thing to do, I don't think I would want you to do something else to make onions bearable. Sometimes, though, adding a little bit of lemon and pepper. The mixture of two makes it tolerable because the lemon, the citric acid in lemon breaks down those aromatics much better than other foods. So see if you can tolerate it, but if it bothers you, just avoid it. That's okay. You're going to save yourself from onion breath too. All right, let's see if my bread is ready here. It looks amazing. It just needs a little bit more of cooking. All right, so let me go ahead and turn this off and get this thing ready so that I can show you guys what it looks like. Give me 1 second. Let me clean up my surface here. Okay, safety first. Removing the heating surface here. All right, let me just go ahead and put that on a little table that I have prepared here for myself so that I could start plating. This looks amazing. And you see how quickly we made it. Didn't take much time at all. All right. So I'm being fancy here, but you can actually take any plate. You can serve it as is. While the bread is toasting, I'm just going to create a very quick salad. So I have some arugula, and I'm just going to put a tiny bit of extra virgin olive oil and some lemon. You don't have to make a separate dressing, and a touch of salt and a touch of black pepper. This is my favorite way of eating greens. And you just kind of massage it a little bit with your hands. And if you can add greens to your daily food, my goodness, that is one of the best things to do for brain health, for general health. Adding this kind of greens that has been mixed with some lemon and extra virgin olive oil next to your meals, whether it's a sandwich, whether it's pasta, whether it's beans, is great. So why are greens great for you? When you look at the anti-inflammatory properties of any food, the one food that keeps coming back over and over again and stands on top are greens. Greens have the most amount of polyphenols, which are these colored compounds. They're anti-inflammatory compounds that fight against oxidation and inflammation. And as you know, as human beings, with all these processes that are going on in our bodies, we are producing a lot of oxidative damage and inflammation, and greens fight that. And so if you consume greens, wild greens, different kinds of cruciferous greens like kale, like arugula, adding more. I actually have a lot more going on here too. See, I have kale and Swiss chards and all these other things. It's an amazing way of introducing polyphenols and anti-inflammatory products to your meal. Matter of fact, I'm actually going to, so my beans are already really hot. What I'm going to do is, you can add any type of green. I bought these beautiful rainbow chards, and all I'm going to do is basically just kind of chop it up really roughly. Hi, Dean. And Dean is here as well.
Hi, everyone.
All right. I was just telling them about the benefits of greens, of how amazing it is, and that one should use every opportunity to add greens to their foods.
Absolutely.
So here, what I'm going to do is basically, I'm not even going to cook it because my beans are nice and hot. I'm just going to add about, I would say, half a cup to 1 cup of greens of whatever type you want. That was close. I would have cut myself there. All right, so I just kind of, put it there, and now I'm going to add the parsley in there as well. Let me go ahead and change. Can you, do you mind taking this and changing it to the other camera if you don't mind? So they can actually see what I'm doing here. There it is. Thank you very much. And so all I did was basically added the Swiss chards and the parsley, and the heat from the dish is actually going to wilt and soften it up. You don't need to cook it for a long time. And that's it, my friends. This dish is ready. At the end, of course, you're going to taste it a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit of lemon. as I always do in every dish. And I'm also going to add some black pepper, freshly ground black pepper. All right. And Dean, do you mind giving me a fork? You want to come and taste it here for me and see how it is? And this is the time to test the flavor. All right, let's go ahead and taste it.
The
So it
hard
looks
work.
beautiful. Flavorful. Amazing.
Wow. Amazing.
Needs a touch of salt.
Yeah.
I think the heat is good, isn't it?
The heat is perfect.
The heat is perfect. I'm not going to add more.
For us, I mean, everybody has their own.
Right. And I did tell them that, the crushed red peppers were optional at the beginning, but this is beautiful. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and get our toast, which is really nicely toasted. Maybe a little burnt too, but that's okay. So here, I'm actually going to have, this is a sourdough. This is a piece of sourdough bread. And I'm going to essentially just top it off. Let me just show you guys. Like that.
Wow, that looks absolutely gorgeous.
Right? Let me just go ahead and keep this. Oh,
Okay,
actually, I'll put it right here.
Okay.
Right. So here it is. All right. So that's your butter beans on a piece of sourdough. And you can add more herbs to it, but I think it has plenty of different things. I think you probably benefit from a little bit of lemon in there. So you can eat it for breakfast and it can be a beautiful meal. The other way to consume it, let me go ahead and get a plate here. All right, the other way to consume it, go ahead and maybe try it if you want to.
Try the sandwich?
Yeah. So the other way to do it is on a bed of greens. So we have our greens here. I'm so sorry I'm going to use my hands. I've washed my hands, but there it is. And you're just going to place it on a bed of greens. And you got yourself one of the most amazing meals. The buttery flavor of the beans and all the spices and the flavors really balance well with the greens underneath it. And there you go, folks. You got yourself a very healthy meal. And you can keep this in the refrigerator. It keeps for, I would say about 5 days to 7 days, depending on what kind of containers you use. Make sure that it's airtight. It's a glass container. You can warm it up in a microwave oven. You can warm it up in an oven. If you just take your glass container and put it directly into the oven, you can warm it up in a pan. And there you go. And that's basically it. All right. Are the leaves from horseradish plant edible? I think yes, they are. Definitely, they are. The horseradish leaves actually have a little bit of what do you call it? Like a velvety texture. It actually has a little bit of spininess to it. Some people can be allergic to it, so washing it really well and then steaming it makes it more edible. And they're very delicious. They're very close to arugula more than any other greens. All right. Laura says, yum, great. I'll give onions and lemon a try. Thanks for the suggestions. I love onions, so I keep gas X and charcoal tablets on hand. Oh no, Tina. Yeah, give it a try. Let me know. Where do you get the recipe? Nicole? I thought we should
Yeah, so for those of you asking for the recipe, the Blue Zones Project will be sharing that with you once they edit the recording and post that. So should be early next week. You'll all be receiving the recipe, everyone who's registered.
Awesome. All right, guys. That's basically it. We just created a beautiful meal. If Amazing. You have your ingredients ready, it shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes to make this dish. I rambled and talked a lot, so it took a lot longer, but I'm really happy that we made this and it actually turned out beautiful. As you can tell, it has a little bit of yellowish tinge to it because of the turmeric. It has beautiful flavors. We actually pumped it up with some greens by adding some Swiss chard. You can add some kale, you can add some spinach, or just eat it as is, but just to increase its nutritional value, we went ahead and we added more greens to it. How is it?
It's amazing. Thank you, guys. We benefit from your show. We have Linner now.
All right, Linner, that's right. Now I'm going to go ahead and give this to the kids to eat. But it was wonderful hanging out with you all. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. For my Blue Zones friends now, Nicole is our coordinator for the study. If you are interested in getting more information about the Healthy Minds Initiative study, you can contact her, Nicole Lundy at bchd.org. Nicole, there she is. She put her email in there as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And here's to your health. Wish you all the best. Eat more beans and lentils and fiber and protein. And hope to see you guys again soon, maybe for another cooking session. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, guys.